I appreciate your particular role in relation to registration. But you can understand from our perspective, the committee is trying to get a particular body of work done and trying to piece together all the pieces. What Senator Wall and I were just discussing was that there are, it appears from your own figures, 119,000 people available to make a contribution towards summer provision. You talked about the extra 3,500 plus the 116,000. That's my figure there. And we hear constantly from parents in school, that this can't be provided. So it's a huge disconnect for us. There's a really strong OECD report out this morning on education in Ireland, and it talks about extremely good outcomes. It talks about underinvestment, but it also talks about teacher salaries being one of the highest in the OECD. I think the 6th highest in the OECD, which of course is most of Europe, the United States, Canada, Israel, Korea, Australia. It's a very broad group of countries. And we won't be able to, I know from asking, we can ask the department, but we won't be able to get a sense of what people are doing privately through the department because it's of necessity private. And so we will really struggle. Perhaps the teachers' unions might be able to provide better information to us on what number of teachers made themselves available for July provision in schools last year, the year before. What's the need? Because what it looks like on the face of it between those two things is that there's a very large number of people available who are paid comparatively very well, and we don't have this service for our most vulnerable children, and so that's our point of frustration.
Yes,
I think is readily understood.
Yes, I do, and I understand, and are here as committed public servants to support the committee in the work in any way that we can, but as you say, we do have a particular role, and just as a point of clarity, that 116,000 is the entire register, that figure that I've given you as it stands today, rather than 119. I know it's right, probably
but
academic.
You talked about your own steps to add to that,
yes.
Your own proactive steps.
Yes.
I suppose my question to you then is, within your particular remit, if we were having this conversation this time next year, what more can you do with your body, with your access to teachers, with your particular role and function? What more can you do to ensure that there's a better July provision delivered next year?
So in the past, when we have been challenged in terms of teacher supply, and it continues to be a challenge, we have worked with the education partners, we've worked with the Department for Education and the other agencies, and we've worked with the managerial bodies, and we have a good method of communication with teachers. So that is one avenue that can be explored, how we can reach out. We do have access to all of those 116,000 teachers.
Just in practical terms, like, what would you do? So we have a dialogue, we have a communication. We've had that, you just said, in the past. I'm saying, what can we do that's different to deliver a different outcome next year?
Yes, and so I was just getting to that. In recent times, we have contacted and had communication with teachers who may have been retired on the register to encourage them to consider becoming involved in substitution where a need may arise at a local level. That is something that could be looked at in the future, how we might communicate with the register to see if there were teachers who were available or interested in becoming involved in different programmes that are being offered by the state to assist with the national effort on this.
We might just try again.
Sure, it's going to deliver.
I try Deputy Collins again. No.
I don't think you had the opportunity to see the previous session. Is that correct? Okay, so that's something of a disadvantage. So this committee is focused on the July provision and the delivery of the July provision. And we've listened to 15 minutes of different contributions and agree with many of them, but not one representative in that 15-minute period has mentioned July provision or what teachers can do to enhance July provision. Mr. Duffy, I have a list of things, investment in a whole range of different things, all of which are important. Not once did you mention what teachers can do to offer. Not once did you address our concern around the delivery of the summer provision. Unwillingness of the department to facilitate resourcing, investment before, during and after, school buildings, investment, school supports, health supports, all correct, assigned SNAs. I totally agree with you, Ms. Kelly, about the HSCP and the Department of Health and a range of other points, range of other criticisms, redeployment scheme, etc., all correct. Not one reference to what teachers can do to enhance July provision. With every respect, not one reference. It's like we got 99 problems, but July provision ain't one. And I'm not trying to be funny, but we have 400 children out of 8,000 who got the full 4 weeks of July provision last year. We heard from the Teaching Council that there are 116,000 registered teachers and an additional 3,500 made available who could help provide July provision. And as a committee, We just don't hear what's happening, what extra contribution, what can be done, what's the plan. And it's of huge concern because we're already engaged on the health side. That's the point of this committee. We're trying to address it piece by piece with everybody. We're not here to hear a list of demands. We're here to get solutions. And it is deeply frustrating to have listened to 15 minutes of important content, but not one constructive, this is what we believe teachers are going to do within the next 12 months to make sure that this statistic in relation to children and July provision doesn't happen again. So I leave it open to you. What's going to be different this time next year from teachers' perspective?
If you take it as you give your statement, so David.
And I have one other comment, Chair, when it's finished.
Thanks, Chair. Deputy, thanks for your question. 2 points I'd make in relation to it. What we were asked to present on was services and supports provided for autistic people.
Which includes this. Yeah.
Indeed, and I absolutely accept that that's an important part of it, but that's what we were asked to present in relation to. So it is quite a broad remit that we have. I can make very clear that TUI's position in relation to July provision is that it is extremely important. It should happen. Ideally, it should be broader than it currently is. It should be more available than it currently is. And indeed, we have been involved, even within the last year or two, in terms of encouraging people to get involved in July provision, because it is an important service.
May I ask you in detail on that? How many of your teachers were engaged in it, and how many do you think need to be engaged on it, if you've been in communication with them?
To the Chair, if I may, we simply don't have those numbers yet. The department, as I understand it, is working on those numbers. We simply don't have them.
You're engaged with your own... OK, sorry.
I was going to ask you, would you supply them figures to the committee when they become available?
If we have them, certainly, but I suspect they'll be departmental figures rather than ours.
Sorry, apologies.
I would apologise if we hadn't addressed the issue of July provision. Had we known that was the focus of the committee, we could have done a submission solely focused on July provision. It's something we look at on a regular basis and have some issues with. But I'm looking at the 4 areas we were asked to comment on in a submission, and it wouldn't be clear to me, reading those 4 topics, that the committee was indeed focused on July provision.
I respect that entirely, Mr. Pike. I suppose from our perspective, we're talking about services and supports to children. This is the single biggest gap. In all of our work so far, we talk about this is the greatest danger to children, the regression that they face. This is, I mean, we're working through all the different issues, but this is the single biggest gap. And what we're being told is the biggest problem in relation to it is matching the teachers to the need. You know, that it wasn't immediately jumped out at you as the single most important question for us to be able to resolve is sort of itself concerning.
Well, I would just point to the 3rd topic, education including limited effectiveness of special classes to promote full inclusion. That was what we thought you wanted to hear about. Force's view on July provision is that it needs to become embedded in the school calendar.
Agreed.
It needs to become something that schools are expected to provide more than given an option. But I think there are resource issues there that probably need to be looked at. We don't know how many special needs assistants participated in July provision. The only way you could find that out is to look at how many were paid the rate. And that's something that mitigates against SNAs necessarily volunteering to do July provision, because there are some issues there in that the rates haven't been looked at for many, many years.
Not just SNAs though, Mr. Pike, it's teachers.
Well, I can't speak for teachers. We represent SNAs and health professionals. Yeah. So I can leave it to others to look at the contribution teachers can make. But one of the comments we continually make to the department is that where the arrangements are announced so late in the school year, I should imagine if you're a school leader, a principal, deputy principal, my colleagues can speak on their behalf, it gives you very little time to get everything organised because the arrangements and the funding are announced so very late in the year. If it was a case that the circular issued at the beginning of the school year, at least schools could then maybe plan with a little more information, because it does seem to me it's done at the very last minute, and that should change.
Thank you, and IPPN.
Like my colleagues, again, I would have taken the brief as being much broader, and I suppose would have raised the issues which we would have felt were crucially important for children with special education needs who couldn't access a classroom. And we do believe that there are solutions to that to make it better for families into the future through the Admissions Act. it's an issue that we've raised with all of our colleagues any time we get the opportunity, because we really do believe that that will actually make special education accessible for children in their local area. We're very concerned that children aren't getting the opportunity to attend school with their brothers and sisters, with their friends in their local community. That's something that we would like to see corrected, and therefore it's an issue that we have highlighted today. Can I just say that absolutely we support and we want to see digital eye provision succeed. From a school point of view, school leaders would have very proactively promoted the scheme. Quite simply, they found it very difficult to get staff in a position to take it up this year. What I can say as an organisation, however, we have certainly, proactively engaged with the department in terms of supporting families, supporting schools, supporting children where they couldn't, or to make it easier for them to access a teacher, to access an SNA through our own portal education posts. We would have developed the technology there to support families. That would have been very much a focus of our own for this year. We'll further develop that. It's something that it's a scheme that we want to see succeed. And we do appreciate how important it is for children who have missed out, on so much over the past number of years. And again, going through a very difficult challenge this year, because quite simply, a lot of schools, especially in urban areas, have posts that are vacant. They're not in a position to even fill their posts at the moment. So we appreciate how important that is for children with extra needs. And certainly as an organisation, we'll be doing everything in our power to try to ensure that it succeeds.
Thank you. And just as Chair, I would accept that it was a general brief that would have been sent to the various organisations, so that's why it wouldn't have been specific. And you just wanted to come in on that.
If I might, I suppose within the schools, within the post-primary sector and with teachers, what I was hearing very much on the ground from teachers, it was that I suppose there was quite a late engagement with the schools. So in terms of planning, it was, I think, on the ground, a rushed effort at the end for those schools, and to put all the structures and the resources in place that were required to roll it out in schools was incredibly difficult. I think in particular this year was incredibly difficult because people came out of 2 years of COVID. There were huge demands in the school. It was a very stressful environment. People were working in a very difficult environment over the 2 years. And from speaking to a lot of our members and colleagues on the ground, what they were saying was that they were just exhausted. When it came to the summertime, they just couldn't face back into the classroom. One of the difficulties, and I suppose I do really welcome, the department this year rolled out a situation where the claims process for teachers could be claimed online, which speeded up the payment for teachers. That was very welcomed. Last year, they found themselves in a situation where, I know you've heard this report, that people were not paid, some until December, and that was a real difficulty. Where that was particularly difficult was where we had teachers who are, as you're aware, not all teachers get 22 full-hour contracts, when they start out, particularly in the post-primary sector. So they also don't have contracts which pay them throughout the summer. So some people end their payment at the beginning of June. They're not paid again until they take up a contract in the summer. So they were left with no choice but to take up other work during the summer months, or to sign on to the unemployment register, as a consequence onto job seekers. For some of those, because they were concerned that they would not receive a payment until December, could not allow themselves to be in a situation where they received no payment during the summer months. And so for those, that was one of the reasons why they struggled to think about engaging. Do I think that it's a really crucial service that should be rolled out? I do. I think that it will, if it's rolled out and schools are given adequate time, the possibility of doing that in a very, in a good way, in a structured way, will be possible. I think that it will become part of the system again, but the structures and the supports need to be given early to schools so they know what they need, what they have available, how many people they can employ to do that. I think in relation to the July provision, there are a number of things that we would like to see put in place also. There is a situation, for example, if I'm in 6th class and I'm a student and I want to avail of the July provision, I'm not able to go to the post-primary school that I will be going to the following year, I think it's a change that would be very welcome if that were possible for those students to go to the post-primary school, so that then they get an opportunity to go to that place, to be in the place that they're going to be in the following year, and it gives them a great opportunity to, I suppose, begin there. I think it would be wonderful if the teachers in the school can be encouraged and facilitated to do that. I think in order to encourage and facilitate teachers in post-primary schools to engage with that, it would also be great if CPDs rolled out to them, if people are given the adequate skills and training, so that when they are, and the offer of engaging with the summer provision becomes available to them, they feel that they're equipped to do it. You know, there are a number of issues, and I know that David has, in our submission, outlined the needs, and I understand your frustration. This, I know you see as a service which is essential to families. It is even more so now, given what we've been through for the last 2 years. It is hugely important, because the disconnect has already been there because of COVID, and then to continue that disconnect where students were unable to engage with the summer provision was a major loss to those families, not just to the students themselves, but to their families also. So we absolutely support the rollout of the July provision. We're just saying give schools, just with all rollout of SEN provision in schools, give schools adequate time to plan, prepare and put the resources in place so that they can roll it out appropriately. Without the stress, because it's an schools have become an awfully stressful environment and they're incredibly busy.
You had another
Yeah,
question?
I just want to just to come back in. I agree, and I exactly accept what you're saying. What I'm looking for, and the number of classes, I can see it in my own constituency, has expanded hugely at secondary and primary level. There's more to go, but it's expanded hugely. I can see that since 2019. So that's just a fact. I know the children that are in it. You're quite right in relation to the planning and preparation, and we will take that up with the department as well. But what I want to hear is this overwhelming rush from teachers to make sure that this happens this year. What are teachers going to do differently this year than last year to make sure that from their perspective, no stone is left unturned, that it isn't somebody else or somebody else or somebody else, that everybody has been so proactive and gotten ahead of this so clearly, teachers, department, without any sort of clashes, without anybody fighting with anybody else. The only outcome that's going to be acceptable is a proper July provision for children, for their families. And indeed, it has a knock-on effect for teachers, so they're not having to deal with the regression first for the first 4 or 6 weeks of the next school year. It's in absolutely everybody's interest, and that's why we're so strong on it.
No, I mean, I absolutely believe that the rollout, but the provision is not within, it is not the job of the teacher to roll this out. This
Correct,
is not their job.
But it is about what's the dialogue about making themselves available. What's that? We have this difficulty where the 116,000 on the register, an extra 3,500 made available through emergency measures, essentially by the Teaching Council last year, 1,200 students and more who are in their training because the teachers haven't been available, is what we're being told, to do that. There does seem to be a very large number of teachers. It's the largest group, we're told, by the Teaching Council of registered professions in Ireland. So there's some gap, because they're not all needed, but a subset of them are needed. And nobody can tell us at this committee who they are, where they are, how many there are, and how they're being activated to do that. But I'm sorry, I shouldn't take up my colleagues' time.
Yeah, I would say in terms of activating and engaging people in doing this, you need to make the job attractive, and you need to make it an attractive position for people to, a job for people to engage in. But I think you also need to give the time and resourcing. You need to have a structure in place, and that structure then encourages people and in a timely fashion advertises the posts and sets it up.
You mean attractive financially?
I mean attractive in every way, that people are appropriately trained. This is not just about money. I mean, if the job of teaching was about money, you wouldn't have so many people doing it. You know, it is, particularly when you look at the fact that there are a lot of young teachers out there who are not on full contracts, are not on full hour contracts, are on sometimes half-hour contracts. This is not just about money, it is about adequately resourcing, it's about putting the time in place, and it is also making sure that people have appropriate training to do the job, I would say.
Thank you. We'll just go to our next.
Thank you so much for coming in. I'd like to know what your views are on delivering a July programme next year.
Thank you very much, Deputy. So the July programme, or the Summer Provision Programme, is a programme that requires teachers to be registered in the main. In the past couple of years, the Council have worked to enhance the supply of teachers available to students in receipt of summer provision or July provision, and I refer specifically this year gone by to the student-teacher registration process that was brought in by statutory instrument in January last. And this gave rise to in excess of 1,200 student teachers being made available to the system to provide summer provision to students who are in need of it. And we furthermore, during COVID, as a measure to release some supply of teachers to those students, we initiated a measure in conjunction with the Department of Education to facilitate newly qualified teachers who would have completed their programmes but not have completed their registration to become involved and to be eligible to participate in the July Provision Programme and the Summer Schools Programme. So students under that measure who had completed their vetting.
I get it. Yep. Thank you. Sorry, we're just a very short time.
Yes,
How many
thank you.
teachers do you think are needed to deliver July provision to everybody?
I wouldn't have those statistics to hand.
Okay, but you just told me that there's 1,200 were made available from that process, and you're trying to make more early stage teachers available. But this is a key challenge for every teacher. It's a key challenge for this committee. So, ballpark. Do you think you said 1,200? Do you think it's 2,400? Do you think it's 24,000?
Mm-hmm. And I suppose, Deputy, I may refer back to what our role is.
I do know what your role is, but you are working in this day to day, and I am not. And so I'm asking you what you think, in your professional opinion, is the amount of number of teachers needed in order to deliver a July provision.
I wouldn't be able to offer you a number, Deputy.
Okay, you've just told me that there's 116,000 teachers registered in this state, which you said was the largest professional registration of all. When we get to talking about those teachers that are available for July provision, I'm sorry, but you either can't give me any estimate between 2,400 and 24,000 or 116,000. And the figure that you have given me is that 1,200 were made available through changing the process at, let's call it, the entry level. You've made 2 changes to that to make more available. So that's difficult. Not to have anything in between for this committee. Either the number that you believe may be necessary, the steps. I mean, if you don't know that, how are you going to make changes, or how are you going to facilitate teachers to be made available?
So the answer to that is that we engage regularly and have frequent and regular communication and collaboration with the Department of Education, who have the enrolment and the allocations available to them. Our register relates to the number of registered teachers rather than the number of registered students. And again, the subset of that are the number of students who have additional needs. So that we don't hold that data.
I know that. Yeah. But like, I mean, like from our perspective, just trying to get a handle on this, like who
Yes,
knows? So they know the number of students. You have access to all of the teachers. Yes. You say to me that you have 116,000 teachers. You say to me that you're in regular dialogue with the department in relation to the delivery of this and assessing the numbers from one way or the other way. I still don't know. I know how many teachers there are. I know how many teachers or student teachers that became available. I have no sense in between of the number of teachers that you believe are necessary and how you're going to activate them, how that's going to happen.
Well, arguably each teacher...
I mean, one of the things that you said to me your function was to enhance the supply of teachers regarding July provision. That's in your opening statement.
Yes. So the measures that we put in place to enhance the supply was the student-teacher regulation and also the NQT process that I was outlining. We hold the data of registered teachers. We don't hold the data of students.
Do you hold any data as to the number of teachers that are registered who are working in the state who are also providing private provision during July or August in any way?
No, we don't hold that.
Do you regulate that in any way?
No.
Do you regulate the conduct of teachers outside of working in the state system in any private capacity, any private work that they're doing?
So we regulate any teacher who is registered. So they may be within a school that is a recognised school of the state, or they may be employed in a private capacity. And we regulate any teacher who is registered with the council. Okay,
so we have all of that data, but we still don't know A, how many teachers are needed to deliver a proper July provision programme, B, how many may be delivering, as parents tell us, other sort of contemporaneous solutions in that period on a private basis. We just don't know, essentially. I don't mean to be aggressive with you. I just want to know how many teachers are needed, because if this committee is going to recommend July provision for every child, then we sort of need the input of the teachers in a big way, right?
Oh yes, I understand, Deputy. And just to be very clear, we are required to hold the data that we need for our functions, to discharge our functions, and our key function is registration
Right, but we all can do more than our basic function. We can all take that extra step towards proactivity. This is a key challenge for children and for teachers, and everybody wants this to be delivered. So we can all do more than than basically turning up. You know, we can put a bit more proactivity around these things, right?
Yes, and I have referred to 2 of those initiatives that we took to be more proactive in relation to the supply of teachers and releasing some supply of teachers at a time when they were needed in the system.
Yes, but that is still not enough because it's not getting delivered. And my question is, in addition to that, in addition to the 1,200 out of the under 116,000, how many of those are needed and how are we going to deliver? But I'm over my time and I'm sure my colleagues have interest in this also.